Hey everybody, I'm Guy and this is Just Bluefish Watch Reviews, and what do we have here today? Well, we have this watch roll, and it's a really nice leather roll with a buckle enclosure. But what's inside? Well, this is a watch from Bremont, and it's the Bremont Supernova Albus White Dial Edition. It's a stellar watch, and I am really excited to bring it to you guys here on the channel today because this is actually Bremont's first integrated bracelet design, and it's powered by their in-house manufacture ENG 375 movement. Now, before we dive into this watch, a big thanks to my channel partner and watch dealer Exquisite Timepieces for letting me borrow this watch for the video. And of course, a big shout out to Joe McHale over there at Exquisite as well. If you need anything at all, whether it's this watch or anything else they sell, I really do encourage you to give Joe and Exquisite Timepieces a shout via phone or email. They will definitely take the best care of you. You can reach Joe via the phone number there at the store, which is 239-227-2932, or you can always email him. His address is joe@exquisitetimepieces.com. So a few generalizations about the Supernova line before we get down to business with this specific model. The Bremont Supernova H1 Generation comes in a few versions, this one being the white dial Albus variation, but they do have an option for a black dial with Arabic numeral layout very similar to this watch, and there's a midnight blue dial variation with nice stick markers instead of numerals if you prefer that more streamlined look. And as I mentioned, this is Bremont's first watch with an integrated bracelet design, and I gotta say, it's really awesome, with one small caveat that I will discuss later. And while you almost can't talk about integrated bracelets without drawing comparisons to the AP Royal Oak, this is an awesome bracelet regardless and in its own right. Now, all the Supernova watches, and any watch in the Bremont catalog featuring an ENG 300 series movement is part of the H1 generation range. What is that H1 mean? Well, basically, it's an in-house timing standard that Bremont tests all of their ENG 300 movements against to ensure chronometer class timekeeping and performance. Now, you might be asking, why not just use COSC? Surely that's better, right? Well, COSC is definitely a great standard by which to measure and certify a watch's movement for timekeeping. But let's be fair, Rolex, Omega, many other brands have their own in-house timekeeping standards, and they bypass COSC entirely. Now, I'm sure Bremont is looking to emulate a similar in-house exclusive standard like those other brands are. Now, as far as the specifications go, first let's talk about the watch case. The dimensions listed on Bremont's website state that the case is 40 millimeters in diameter. Now, that being said, I can't get my calipers anywhere on this watch in a place that actually measures under 41.5 millimeters. And with the really big crown guards on the side of the case, and with a lug-to-lug measurement that is in the ballpark of nearly 52 millimeters, I will say this. I suggest you treat the watch more like a 42 millimeter timepiece despite that 40 millimeter designation on the Bremont website. On the wrist, this watch feels like a watch in that 42 millimeter and above range. It does not wear like a 40 millimeter sports watch, and look, that's fine. It wears well on the wrist. I just want to temper your expectations. This is not a small watch. It has some significant wrist presence. Now, the watch case is in Bremont's triptych case construction, and it has awesome brushed and polished finishings. The DLC-treated mid-case barrel is distinctive, and it's nicely offsetting to the cool stainless steel tones between the front and the rear of the case. The screw-down crown texture and threading is absolutely flawless. It's a perfect size to operate seamlessly, and when hand-winding the movement, it's about as smooth an action as any watch that I have ever had any first-hand experience with. Now, the integrated bracelet. It's in stainless steel as well, and it's a smooth brushed graining with some polished facets, terminating into a butterfly deployment clasp. And let me point something out, because I've been ridiculed for using the term deployment clasp in the past. This is the exact verbiage used on Bremont's website. I'm not pronouncing deployant incorrectly. Nevertheless, the clasp lockup and release is as flawless as the crowned action, and the fit and finish, like the case, is excellent as well, with that one caveat that I mentioned earlier. The edges of the bracelet in particular are really, really crisp. Now, on one hand, I guess you could say that it's impressive that they can execute such crisp and tight lines and edges, because it does feel super high quality and it feels like it has a ton of precision. On the other hand, the bracelet links can bite into the wrist a little bit, compromising the comfort on the wrist, and it's not my favorite feel when I'm wearing it. If I were the designer, I'd have knocked the edges down just a hair to give it a slightly smoother feel on the wrist. Now let's get back to the front of the watch and the watch face. The Albus white dial is made from a metal disc with the classic Bremont raised central section framed with a perimeter of concentric circular lines. The applied Arabic numerals are nickel-plated and filled with superluminova, just like the matching nickel-plated handset. The two standout features of the dial are the date and the power reserve indicator, both very nicely done. Now, the date is a multi-disc date complication, such that the digits of the date rotate independently of one another. The big date complication adds just a little bit something extra over the standard date wheel that we usually see, and I enjoy that that's a part of this watch. And then we have the power reserve indicator at the 6 o'clock side of the dial, and I have to say that it is a really well done power reserve. A big complaint that I see about watches from Grand Seiko, for example, is the way that they usually do their power reserve indicator. They have it in an asymmetrical and offset subdial that many people consider an eyesore. Well, in the case of this watch, it is a really well thought out and well designed subdial centrally located on the lower side of the face where it probably should be. It's a really balanced and it's a harmonious design. I have to say they nailed it with the power reserve indicator on this watch. Now, I do have one small complaint about this dial, and it's a complaint that I have about a lot of white dials, and that's why I don't typically own them. It's a little hard to read because of the low contrast. And if I were buying one of these watches for myself, I would probably go with the black or the blue versions. My eyes, they just need that super high contrast. That being said, this dial is extremely well finished and the design is absolutely amazing. But my tired eyes just have a little bit of trouble picking up on the details of this dial at a glance. Now, of course, your mileage may vary. Finally, we have the dial being covered by a flat, anti-reflective, scratch-resistant sapphire crystal, as well as the exhibition case back on the rear side of the watch, giving us a great presentation of the ENG 375 in-house Bremont movement. Now, the movement is, as mentioned, a part of that H1 generation, meaning that its timing and its tolerances are being held to a higher standard. And this 20-tool jewel movement features a 65-hour power reserve. It beats at 3.5 hertz, is of course a hacking and hand-winding automatic, and it features very nice rhodium and gold-plated bridges, as well as a silicon escape wheel and a free-sprung hairspring. Wow, that's a lot. Now, the fit and finish and the decoration of this movement is very nice. And the action of the oscillating rotor is flawlessly smooth, much like that hand-winding action of the crown. You can really tell just by looking at the attention to detail and observing the movement in action that a great deal of time and energy went into the design and the manufacturing of this Bremont in-house movement. Overall, I have to say that I am very impressed with the Bremont Supernova. The quality is outstanding, and it's an indication that this somewhat young brand is making very big moves in the world of watchmaking. Now, there are a very few small complaints that I did have about the watch. but nothing that stands out as what I would call a deal breaker. I would definitely recommend checking this out to anyone that's interested in. So again, let me give a quick shout out and thanks to my friends at Exquisite Timepieces for loaning me this watch for the review, and of course thanks to Joe from Exquisite Timepieces for getting it over here to me. If you need anything, give Joe a call via phone or email. He's a great guy and he will most definitely take care of you. Now, finally, let me go ahead and say thanks to all of you for tuning in and watching. That's the most important thing here. I greatly appreciate it. So keep doing it. Hit that subscribe button. Maybe turn on that bell notification so you don't miss my next videos. Now, with all that said, I guess it's time to wrap this one up for today and say, until the next one, bye now.